One of the biggest positions yet to be named is Treasury Secretary. And now the New York Times is reporting Donald Trump is having second thoughts about his top choices. So who are the men Donald Trump is rethinking, and who is he considering now? Joining us, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans and Bloomberg Business Week national correspondent Joshua Green. Green is the author of The Rebels, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the struggle for a new American politics. Christine, I'm going to start with you on who could lead Treasury. He's got four names: Kevin Warsh, Mark Warren, Howard Lutnick, and Scott Bessent. What's the difference between these men?
Some are more traditional, would be a more traditional steward of the Treasury Department. The Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, who you mentioned there, is kind of a real type A personality, sort of more out there. He's been really behind Donald Trump over the past few weeks, so he's more of that sort of cheerleader kind of figure you've seen. Look, this position, I think the most important, only Donald Trump knows who he's going to pick.
Who's who when we're looking at these pictures?
Okay, Howard Lutnick there is on the left, and you've got a couple of investors that you're seeing. there's Howard Lutnick on the left again. So the most
on the right.
The most important thing here is this position. This is America's diplomat for the world in terms of finance. We are the biggest investment in the world, so this person has to execute Donald Trump's strategy, but not upset the apple cart in terms of our destination for all of that investment around the world.
You're talking about, Donald Trump has these big aims here. He wants to impose sweeping new tariffs, and he also wants to get rid of millions of undocumented immigrants, two things that could potentially be very disruptive.
And he told Americans he was going to lower their prices, but the policies he is also saying he's going to do are almost by every economist seen as inflationary. So he's got a tall order here, and he's got to have a Treasury Secretary who can be the person who executes it.
So, Josh, you've been writing about that tall order. You call it an impossible task, which is delivering for both the working class and the billionaire class. What are these promises that Donald Trump has made to each of these groups, and how do you do both at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question, Katie. And I write in the new issue of Business Week that the central tension in Trump's presidency is really going to be managing this coalition, which on the one hand includes billionaires and Wall Street figures like Elon Musk and Howard Lutnick, but on the other hand includes this multiracial working class coalition that a lot of people didn't think would turn out for Trump, but did. And as I say in the piece, there are a number of auspicious signs. First of all, Trump has signaled that the first thing he wants to do, and Mike Johnson, the Republican House Speaker, has signaled the first thing he wants to do is extend Trump's tax cuts for corporations and the rich. Trump told me and some of my Business Week colleagues in July he'd actually like to cut corporate tax rates even further. So it's probably not the kinds of things that working class folks were hoping for when they elected Donald Trump. So on the one hand, he has to keep that Wall Street contingent happy. On the other hand, as Christine said, he's promised to lower prices. And if you go out and push through deep tax cuts and you raise tariffs, most mainstream economists, not Trump, but most mainstream economists think those price increases are going to be passed along to consumers. So I think he's got a really tough task ahead of him. And that's not even beginning with the problem at hand, which is that he can't seem to settle on a Treasury Secretary.
He's also got to get a little bit of a buy-in from Congress on some of the other things that he wants to do, not to mention the tax cuts, but the child tax credit that he's proposed from $2,000 right now to $5,000. He's talking about eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits, also talking about eliminating taxes on tips. All of this stuff would cut into the baseline finances of this country. We've been so worried about the national debt. What do you do when Donald Trump comes along and starts promising everybody free money?
Well, that's a real problem that Trump has. We did a study at Bloomberg that tallied up all of his proposed tax cuts, and I think it came to something like over $10 trillion. So there is no way, even with full Republican control of Washington, he could deliver even a majority of that. So he's got a problem ahead of him as far as figuring out how to satisfy all these pieces of his coalition. But the other thing that Trump cares about, let's be honest, is the stock market.
Yeah.
He prides himself on market record highs. And there's been some nervousness over the last week or so. We've seen stocks fall because people don't really know whether to take him at his word. Investors do, whether he's going to push high taxes. They don't know who he's going to put at the Treasury. There's a lot of worry among people I've spoken to that we could wind up with a Treasury Secretary who's sort of the equivalent of Matt Gaetz, somebody who's viewed as an extremist, far off the Wall Street map. So until these issues and positions start to get filled and we get some clarity on this, I think there's going to be a lot of nervousness from everyone about exactly what a second Trump administration is going to look like.
I'm so glad you went there, because I wonder if the stock market is going to be the limiting factor for Donald Trump and who he chooses for Treasury Secretary and what he actually follows through with, whether he follows through with the tariffs, for instance, if it does, or the mass deportations. If it does start to negatively impact the stock market, does Donald Trump pull back?
He uses the stock market as his personal grade, letter grade for how he's doing, and he takes personal credit for it. So I think that actually could be a mitigating factor for him as he gets out there and he's actually putting these policies in place. And what he says about, somebody who's a Wall Street, mainstream kind of player, that it would be devastating for Donald Trump to put a flamethrower in the Treasury Department. I don't think he wants a flamethrower in the Treasury Department. I think he really wants somebody who's going to do tax reform next year, get the tax cuts that he wants, and is going to be his steward on the national stage as he tries to explain to the world why he's putting all these tariffs in.
Josh, it's been so long since I've seen you. I will give you the final word in the program.
Yeah, look, it's a really tough job because everybody around Trump has told me he wants a Treasury Secretary who looks the part, meaning rich, strong, alpha male, et cetera, and beloved by Wall Street. On the other hand, he's trying to do things like raise tariffs that people on Wall Street don't want to happen. And so it's a really tough job to fill, and nobody has really popped up who's acceptable and willing to do the job. And so we're in the middle of this kind of disarray, and it's something Trump's going to have to figure out.
It's interesting it's taken this long to get a Treasury Secretary nomination from Donald Trump or a pick. We've gotten all the other big ones pretty quickly. Joshua, it hasn't even been that long. It's been 2 weeks. Joshua Green, really good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Christine Romans, thank you as well.